Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s, and it's a Stephen King showdown when I put Stanley Kubrick's The Shining against Rob Reiner's Misery. And this one was another hard decision to make because both of these movies are really good. Now, the instance of this one, I haven't read either one of the source novels for both of these movies, so it's not going to be which one's the better adaptation of the Stephen King source material. It's going to be a determination of what is the better movie. And as this is usually, that's the par for the course of these videos is which one makes the better movie. I don't care which one makes the better statement, what the fuck it's trying to say, or, you know, any of that other bullshit. It's like, it comes down to it. What's the better movie? Who has the better performances? And who is the better director? So first up, we have Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And it stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and also Scatman Crothers in a very memorable performance. And also the kid, Danny Lloyd, one of the better child performances ever in a movie. Because usually child performances, especially in horror movies, are fucking annoying as shit. But this kid is far from annoying and, you know, actually does a really good job. And also, like, Jack Nicholson is one sinister looking motherfucker. And I don't think he's ever been more sinister than in The Shining. You know, it's just like any like mannerism that this dude has is just like fucking insane. You know, like even just when he's just driving the car at the beginning of the film and he just looks like he's ready to fucking snap any minute, you know. And of course the film centers around the Jack Nicholson character gets a job as a caretaker for the Overlook Hotel, which is, you know, is closed from like October 31st to May 1st, you know, because of all the snow and shit. It's like, and it has a bad history too, you know. It was built on a fucking Indian burial ground, and like the previous caretaker had, like, you know, chopped up his family and then killed himself, and, you know, there's a lot of other weird shit going on. And of course, like, but, you know, the Jack Nicholson's character is a writer, so he's got severe writer's block. He's trying to like really get his shit together and stuff. And of course, like, this is one of the best Shelley Duvall performances too, especially when she wasn't, for not being in a Robert Altman film. And she, of course, was one of the kind of discovered by Robert Altman and was a big part of his acting troupe, so to speak. And most of her best performances were in his film. This is one of those rare occurrences where she wasn't in an Altman film and she was fucking extraordinary in it. And of course, Scatman Crothers, he's the only other one in the film besides Danny who has that ability, the shining, as they call it, you know, kind of a mental telepathy type thing going on. And he has a connection with the boy, and that, you know, ends up, you know, him trying to save him at the end of the movie when he's all trying to kill his family and shit and stuff. But then he ends up getting axed. Kind of a trope of horror movies, you know, the black man usually dies in the horror films. It's usually when he's trying to save the, you know, a white kid or something, or, you know, it's, now who knows what the fuck that's supposed to mean, or whatever the fuck, or maybe Kubrick was making fun of it. You can tell that Kubrick was setting out to make the greatest horror movie of all time. And you know, arguing academically, he probably does, you know, with the sights and the sounds. Everything looks so sinister. Even like the beautiful exterior shots of the mountains and stuff, and the snow and that expansive maze. Every single thing in this movie is made to be sinister, even though some of it is, you know, insanely beautiful. You know, and there's also some funny moments in it too. Joe Turkel is that bartender. The whole exchange with that, you know, and dealing with the ghosts and shit, and, you know, it's a very unsettling movie. A lot of unsettling imagery, especially at the end when Shelley Duvall's kind of running through the maze that is that hotel, and she's seeing all this, like all the ghosts and shit that inhabit the fucking hotel, and it is wildly disturbing, you know. And but then they get away, and you know, Nicholson just freezes in the snow. Yet again, a very chilling, sinister scene. And we find out at the end, this motherfucker had been here before. He really had. Even, he was saying he had severe deja vu, and you see the picture and shit. Now, I've heard like conspiracies that this movie is kind of Kubrick talking about how they faked the moon landing and all that shit. I don't read into any of that other shit because to me it's just a flat out horror film. There's anybody can read into anything, but the only thing you can really read into The Shining is that it's a great fucking horror film. And then we move forward to Rob Reiner's Misery, which stars Kathy Bates in an Academy Award-winning performance and James Caan. James Caan plays a writer who he had just finished his novel. He just finished the novel, and he's on his way back to New York. And of course, like his name in the film is Paul Sheldon, and he's a writer of a series called Misery, and very popular. And he ends up getting in a car wreck, and he gets rescued by Kathy Bates, who plays Annie Wilkes. And what seems like a Good Samaritan type thing turns into something far more chilling. It turns out she kind of set the whole thing up, and because she wanted to, she wanted to be around him and stuff. She's like his number one fan, and because his legs are all fucked up, he's bedbound and shit. She's basically his nurse and doctor and all this other shit, caretaker, if you will. And as the course, because he's got his manuscript on him, she wants to read it. She doesn't fucking like it because there's a lot of swearing in it and shit. And, she makes him burn the fucking thing, which is one of the most, because what this film seems to me, I haven't read the book, but if it's close enough to the book, it seems to me like this is probably, out of all like the fucked up shit that Stephen King has written about, this seems to me like his like number one greatest nightmare. Because being a writer, like the worst thing you can make a motherfucker do is like burn their manuscripts. It's almost like asking you to kill your kid. That it's a part of you. It's very fucked up. So that's a very heartbreaking scene. And then also she doesn't like the fact that the last Misery novel, he has Misery dying at the end, so she makes him write another fucking novel. It's like basically he's writing to stay alive. And all the while this shit's going on, of course, his agent in New York, played by the lovely Lauren Bacall, gets the help of the local sheriff, played by Richard Farnsworth, who's absolutely brilliant in the film. He's on the case. He seems like some bumblehead sheriff. He actually is pretty on point. When he finally figures it out, he ends up getting the fucking shotgun blast in the back, and now he's dead. Kind of similar to how Scatman Crothers buys it at the end of The Shining when he's trying to save the day and shit. So now it's up to Paul, who's, basically helpless, but he ends up outsmarting this bitch and ends up killing her, death by typewriter, so to speak. And, and then ends up, back to normal thing, writing, wrote a new book and all this shit, but he's still clearly haunted by the essentially the ghost of Annie Wilkes. He's seeing this bitch everywhere and stuff, who wouldn't? It's a very traumatic experience and shit, and he's definitely dealing with it, So what it comes down to for me, both of these movies are very well done. There's not anything I can really say bad about either one of these films because everything is on point for both of them. Now, of course, Kathy Bates won the Academy Award for Misery. Now, is her performance better than Jack Nicholson's? I don't think so. Because even though like she can just in and out snap from like calm to crazy, crazy to calm, that in and of itself is pretty brilliant. But I don't think anybody can be on that level of Jack Nicholson as far as like just how sheerly like just insane this motherfucker looks, and just the shit that he says, is like so off the cuff, like, everything has like a threat behind it, even if it's not meant to be. And then we come to, is Rob Reiner a better director than Stanley Kubrick? Fuck no. Fuck no. Stanley Kubrick is, one of the greatest directors of all time. And what's brilliant about Stanley Kubrick is his films are beloved from like the most pretentious like film douche to like the most regular ass Joe Smo truck driver. You know, there's everybody loves a Kubrick film, no matter which one it is. You know, now granted, Rob Reiner's shit is a little more accessible to audiences, but most like art house douchebags aren't going to fuck with his shit. And mind you, this was his second adaptation of a Stephen King novel. And of course, the first one being Stand By Me. But the thing of it is, it's serviceable. Does it do anything to enhance? Is it truly frightening, or as frightening as The Shining? I don't think so. I think The Shining is just purely terrifying on all fronts, not just the subject matter, because mainly Misery has to rely on subject matter alone to be frightening, and you know the psycho that is Kathy Bates, because you know all that shit comes out about her. You know, it's very well done in the fact that how everything's revealed. But I think The Shining is all the more better just because there's shit that's revealed, but it's also not as clear because you still don't really know what the fuck happened. And to me, that's even more chilling than knowing everything that happened. And you know, and just the all around look of the film, I got to give it to The Shining. Because, like I said, it is one of the greatest horror films ever made. It's hard pressed to be beaten. You know, granted, this was a very hard decision to make, but there can't be a draw. Somebody has to win each round, and this round goes to The Shining. So that makes it 88-69 for anybody keeping score. The 70s are up by 19 again. You know, the 90s keep coming with these 1-2 punches, but man, you know, The Shining was in that golden era of 1980. Where the last vestige of greatness from the new Hollywood seeped through right before the 80s fully took over and started to suck the life out of the cinema, you know. And so, if I've said anything wrong, anything you disagree with, feel free to eviscerate me in the comments. It's just one asshole's opinion on a very long, self-indulgent journey to see which decade was better for movies, the 70s or the 90s. And my money's still on the 70s, and it's looking like I'm right. But who knows? Who really knows what lurks beyond? So you better watch your ass.